Hi, everyone, this is the Encyclopedia Channel. The book interpreted by this program is called Procrastination: Why You Do It, What to Do About It Now. There are two authors of this book, Bork and Lenora Yuan, both of whom are PhDs in psychology and senior psychological counselors at the University of California. Since 1979, they have created a group therapy course for procrastinators among students. They are committed to providing psychotherapy and services to students, corporate organizations, and public groups across the United States and around the world. They are active in Berkeley and Stanford University forums all year round. So, what exactly is procrastination? What is the cause of procrastination? How to overcome procrastination? After listening to this episode, I hope it can help everyone improve this behavior. We have sorted out some manifestations of procrastination in this book for you, as well as 3 main reasons and 3 solutions. Let's take a look at what procrastination is all about. First part. What the hell is procrastination? First of all, not every situation that procrastinates in doing things is called procrastination. Some people procrastinate in doing things, but they don't feel uncomfortable, they don't blame themselves, they don't get entangled, and they don't want to be more efficient. This kind of situation is not called procrastination. What can be called procrastination means that he is not only procrastinating in doing things, but also psychologically he cannot accept himself as he is now, and wants to make changes eagerly, but he just can't. In the end, this kind of psychological contradiction leads to extreme pain, and some lesions will also appear on the body, such as headache, stomach pain, and insomnia, which finally affect my normal life. Situations like this are called procrastination. A person with procrastination, when he is doing things, he will fall into a trap called the procrastination cycle. When facing a new task, he first has high expectations for himself, and wants to start early, prepare fully, and finally complete the task beautifully. But he has been in this state of thinking, which is what the author calls a brain-locked state. He just can't start and refuses to act. He procrastinates while being extremely anxious. When the deadline is approaching, he either finishes it all at once or gives up directly. A reader told the author that when he was writing a manuscript, he experienced a complete procrastination cycle, to describe how he felt. For example, he had to hand in the manuscript on Friday, so he started preparations on Monday, with a high expectation in his head for this manuscript, that is, he wanted to write a good article with clear logic, humor, and depth, and it was best to let others read it with a wow effect. Then I started to collect materials. Although I thought a lot, I just couldn't write. I felt that I was not ready, and I kept procrastinating until Wednesday night. I didn't even have an outline, and then I became more and more anxious. On Thursday morning, his psychology changed a little, that is, he suddenly felt that he still had a lot of time, and he began to calm down. At this time, he still had a day and a night, right? Then I started to think slowly, got some ideas, and spent until Thursday night, no matter what, I had to start writing. That's it anyway, and then writing until midnight, finally finished. At the moment of completion, the first thought that burst into his head was that he must not procrastinate next time, and must start early, because this process is really uncomfortable. In this case, he is a mild procrastinator, because at least he can meet the deadline. The severe procrastination patient is much worse than this situation. The severe procrastination patient has the same mental process in front of him. He wants to do something and is very anxious, but he can't move. But the difference is that he couldn't complete it before the deadline and gave up directly, or he was always in such a state of anxiety and entanglement when there was no deadline. After a long period of time in this state, there will be a tendency to self-attack, self-destruction, and broken jars. The worse he does, the less he can accomplish his goals. Instead, he has higher and higher requirements for his next goal, thus forming a closed loop of self-defeating. In the end, this state of mind will be projected to the outside, and he will start to have strong dissatisfaction with the external environment. If this happens, no matter what kind of environment the person is in, he will feel like he is in hell. Someone gave such a definition to procrastination, saying that it is a kind of behavior that destroys one's life without any reason. This sentence shows that if procrastination is not handled properly, it will really have serious consequences. To say that there is no reason for it, the author of this book does not agree. He spent 25 years summing up 3 levels of reasons for us physically, psychologically, and ideologically, helping us understand the deep psychological mechanism behind the behavior of procrastination. Let's look at these reasons below. The second part. Let's talk about the physical reasons first. Some people just don't want to face it. They say procrastination, small things, if I take it seriously, I can overcome it easily. You can see that he has to procrastinate even to overcome procrastination. If he is really so confident, it is likely that he is not clear about the nature of procrastination. You can see that we can calculate a time account. About 6 million years ago, humans appeared on our Earth, but at that time there were many kinds of humans, including capable people, Heidelberg straight people, craftsmen, Mrs. Ludor, and many other races. None of them were our ancestors, and they are now extinct. The branch of Homo sapiens, our ancestors, appeared about 1.5 million years ago. The main difference between them and other races is that they can use tools. Although tools are also slowly evolving, there have been no major changes in the past 1.5 million years. The branch of Homo sapiens, our ancestors, there are only 2 most important things for them to live. One is to find food, the other is to find a partner, and there is no other pursuit. Appeared about 10,000 years ago, our ancestors began to settle down 1.5 million years animals ago in the main activity and planted crops. The main difference, at this time there was a surplus of food. Between them and other races is that they can use tools. Although tools are also, once there was a surplus of food slowly evolving, there was a need for counting. There have been no major changes in the past 1.5 million years. There are only 2 most important things for them to live. One is to find food, the other is to find a partner, and there is no other invented writing 4,000 years ago, and civilization appeared. 10,000 years ago, our ancestors began to settle down, raised animals in captivity, and planted crops. More than 20 years ago, the internet became popular, and a large amount of information began to spew out, as much information as the water in the river. You don't need to find water at all, you can use it anytime you want. 10 years ago, smartphones became popular, ushering in a new information age with an explosion of information. From this point of view, as a person, we start from mastering information, having our own goals, and having our own pursuits, which is only a few short years. Take weight loss as an example. If you look at a child, he doesn't have enough information, so he doesn't realize that he is fat, and he doesn't have the need or desire to lose weight. It doesn't take long for a person to realize that being fat is bad, to start with desire to lose weight. With the information we have mastered in just a few years, how to know how to do it is good for ourselves, how to do it can have a better result in the future, and how to do it can make our life richer. It is what we call rationality to fight against the brain that has evolved for 1.5 million years, that eats and sleeps when it encounters something, is afraid of strange things, and hides when it encounters uncomfortable situations. The brain that has no pursuit and no need for self-control is also called instinct. These 2 forces are fighting in our brains. Which one you say will win must be instinct. From the perspective of evolutionary time, they are not of the same order of magnitude at all. For example, just like reason and desire, these 2 villains are driving the car of our body together, but reason is as weak as a little old man. If you want it to drive, you have to spend a lot of energy, especially fuel consumption. Instinct, the villain, looks like a burly man, especially strong, and he is the one who drives the car at ordinary times, so he has no reason at all. It should be said that this car belongs to him in the first place. They have been driving for 1.5 million years, and their rationality is like a passenger who just got up. When the 2 of them are robbing control of this car, their rationality will definitely fail. In fact, what I want to say is that when we encounter a difficult matter, it is normal for us to procrastinate, and it is abnormal not to procrastinate. Therefore, in the face of procrastination, the first concept to establish is not to blame yourself, because this is the natural ability of our brains. Everyone is the same, there is nothing special. The above actually means that we always think that reason is controlling our body, but most of the time we are actually just instinctive reactions. Since it is an instinctive reaction, what kind of psychology causes us to procrastinate? The author of this book analyzes that it is fear, that is, fear. Fear is a very good tool to protect ourselves. A person who is not afraid of anything, whether in primitive society or modern society, will not live long. Either he is dead or he is in prison. Fear is not only an innate ability of ours, but the external environment will also create a lot of fear for us. For example, a child is not afraid of many things, but the older he grows, the more things he is afraid of. Why is this? Because our entire education system is mainly composed of two parts. One is the reward system. Excellent students, hardware facilities, degree certificates, and good jobs are all included in the reward system. Exams, attendance, discipline, calling parents, it's all a system of intimidation. That's how we grow up, isn't it? If you don't study hard, you won't be able to find a job in the future, and if you can't find a job, your life will be very bad. So from a certain point of view, we are all scared. So what are we afraid of? The first one is, of course, the fear of failure. People who procrastinate have a typical concept. They equate their values, abilities with their own performance. This is a typical and very traditional concept. After passing the exam, everyone will say that you are good, smart, and promising. If he fails the test once, he will be trampled into a meatloaf in an instant, that is, he is incompetent, does not work hard, and is an idiot. In fact, we all know now that fluctuations in performance are too normal, and all things can only be achieved after countless trials and errors. A person with procrastination, although he knows this, he just raises his performance to the height of ability and value. In such a situation, ability is constantly fluctuating. If you can't do one thing well, you may feel that you are capable 1 second, but suddenly become useless in the next second. How can you say that it makes them not afraid? So they come up with a way to procrastinate and screw things up, and eventually they start telling themselves, look, I'm not incompetent, I'm just not giving it my all, so they can avoid seeing who they really are. People with procrastination, in addition to being particularly afraid of failure, he also has a fear of success. You said that fear of failure is easy to understand, and there are not many people who can get along well with failure, and those who can do it are all very powerful people. So what is the fear of success? It turns out that this type usually has family problems. In such a family, he tends to doubt a child's ability, which will gradually make the child also start to doubt himself. This causes them to have an inertia when they do things, that is, every time they are about to complete, when they are about to succeed, they start to worry, what if what their parents say is true, what if they are really not that material? You see, they start worrying about these things. In order not to see the final result, they started to procrastinating and not completing it. So you see, the family environment can also cause a person's procrastination to a certain extent. In addition to the fear of success and fear mentioned above for procrastination, what they fear most is actually the fear of control. You see, when we are forced to do something, we tend to avoid it. This problem is actually quite simple. It is a problem of internal motivation and external motivation. You can see that when we are doing what we want to do in our hearts and decide to do it, we have internal motivation. When we use external force to force something, whether it is what our parents say, someone else gives us money, or is forced by the situation, it is an external motivation. All the reasons we act are to satisfy this motive. If it is intrinsic motivation, that is to do it for self-satisfaction, then we must be motivated to do it. But once the other party asks you to do it, the internal motivation of this matter will be transformed into external motivation. Then the question is whether we want to satisfy ourselves or others. If the person who needs to be satisfied is not someone you like, but someone you hate, the motivation will completely disappear at this time. It seems to be a bit convoluted, but to put it simply, we are very motivated when we want to do something, or what someone we like asks us to do, but when someone we hate asks us to do something, we must procrastinate, right? The second cause of procrastination mentioned above is fear. Then its third reason is perfectionism. Perfectionism sounds like a beautiful word, but it can also be divided into perfectionism in action and perfectionism in thought. These two gaps are very large, and they are two completely different sets of psychological mechanisms and behavioral habits. The perfectionism in action means that he continues to improve with actions on the basis of his own, and finally obtains a near-perfect result. And ideological perfectionism is miserable. They just stare at that perfect picture, a very high requirement that is impossible to meet in their minds, but they just don't want to face this thing in front of them. Just like carving, it is also a stone. A perfectionist in action has a picture in his head, and then starts to carve, grinding bit by bit. What you make in the end may not be the same as what you think in your head, but it will be a very good work. The second one is different. He doesn't do it, he always thinks about it, and he gets annoyed when he sees this stone, because it's far from the perfect statue in his mind. So when the last time came, he decided to give up without even touching a stone. Then he believes that when he encounters the next stone, he must carve it more beautifully than the first stone. You see, he has set a higher and more impossible requirement. They have high expectations for everything, but in the process of action they find that this requirement is always not met, resulting in a constant sense of frustration. The more painful he is, the less confident he is, the worse his actionability is, and the worse he does, the easier it is for him to give up, and finally a closed-loop self-defeating mechanism is formed. The most frightening thing is this kind of continuous self-defeating, self-provocation, and self-criticism. In the end, he will project it to the external environment and become a behavior habit for him to deal with the outside world. So a deep procrastinator is very difficult to get along with. You can see that they hate themselves very much, and they cannot get along well with themselves, and it is even more impossible to love others. In the final analysis, procrastination is a question of how to face yourself and how to get along with yourself. Many people say that how to treat procrastination is as if procrastination is a disease like a cold or a fever. How can you take a dose of medicine, get an injection, and immediately get better, become particularly efficient, and have no anxiety at once? This kind of thinking is actually very unrealistic. Just like desire and reason, you have to eliminate one. In fact, no matter which of these two is eliminated, a person will become abnormal. Just like James Bond, he is very geographical, he can control his emotions at any time, and going to bed with a Bond girl is very purposeful. Such a person feels like a killing machine, impersonal, and a too rational person will not only make people feel uncomfortable, but his interpersonal relationship will also become poor. It will also be very difficult to get along in the relationship between men and women, because being with such a person will feel particularly stressful. Then if a person is completely controlled by his own instinct, he is no different from a monkey, and it is impossible to accomplish anything. So the problem we have to solve is not to kill anyone, but to reasonably mobilize reason to help us do things at that time, so that the instinct of pursuing instant gratification with a low IQ can rest when it should rest, and don't disturb our normal work. The third part. So how to mobilize this reason and let it do things for us? The author of this book gives us 3 suggestions, which are also 3 ways to overcome procrastination. The first method is to set a deadline. Isn't there such a sentence? It's called deadline. The deadline is the real primary productive force. Look at all our labor, especially mental work, the kind of labor that creates something from scratch. If there is no deadline, how long can it really be delayed? Just like when Darwin wrote The Origin of Species, because there was no deadline, he delayed it for 20 years. You can imagine how the past 20 years have passed. Another example is Leonardo da Vinci. He created more than 6,000 pages of manuscripts in his life, and it is estimated that this is only 1/3. Although there are all kinds of wild imaginations in it, he actually completed few of them. He painted more than 20 paintings in his life. Like The Last Supper, he painted it for 3 years. He painted Mona Lisa for 4 years. In the end, because he was too procrastinating, he broke up with many organizations. Before he died, there was such a sentence in his notes, "Who will tell me which one thing I have completely completed?" You see, although we see that he has created a lot of works, he himself feels that all of them are half-finished products. Because there is no deadline, it is easy to fall into the trap of infinite improvement, and he cannot feel the instant sense of accomplishment after completing a work. So setting a deadline not only allows us to complete tasks quickly and on time, it is also a kind of protection for our psychology. The second method is to change the environment. When you look at war, this terrain is particularly important. Usually in a war where less is more, it occupies a high ground, lures the enemy into its own environment, and then shoots them from a high place. The battle between us and procrastination is actually the same. Although instinct is a very strong man, we must not be able to defeat him head-on, but his IQ is not high, just like a 7 or 8-year-old child. What if we want a 7 or 8-year-old to do his homework seriously? It must be placed in a quiet environment, and cartoons must not be placed next to him, otherwise he will not be able to sit still. For example, I really like flying. Although the plane is very uncomfortable, the two seats are narrow, and mobile phones are not allowed, and there are no messy snacks, and no one chats with you. At an altitude of tens of thousands of meters, I definitely don't want to go out. At this time, the mind is easy to calm down. At this time, I find that my work efficiency is particularly high. I often sit down on a plane, and I can solve all the things I don't want to do. So when we need to complete some highly focused things, we must first put ourselves in an environment without interference. As we said in the previous program, resisting temptation itself requires a lot of willpower. If we use it to resist temptation, we will have no extra energy to do the things in front of us. So giving ourselves a quiet environment will save us a lot of effort. Isn't there a saying that I can't fight but I can't hide, right? The third method is the transformation of mentality. You see, people with procrastination often have too high expectations for this matter, so we have to make a psychological switch, that is, from what I want to do to a perfect thing to what I want to do is the worst thing. You see, in fact, people with procrastination are not weak in ability, often they are quite strong. The most difficult thing for them is that they have no way to start. Once they start, their work efficiency is actually quite high, so it is especially important for procrastinators to lower their expectations. For example, if I want to make a salad, I tell myself that I will make the worst salad. If I want to write an article, I tell myself that I want to write a nonsense article that will drive everyone crazy. In this way, once the expectations are adjusted, it will be easy for him to start, and it will be easy for him to relax mentally. Anyway, that's it, it's nothing, right? Just be serious and try your best. What the final result will be is simply not something you can control. Pushing out the responsibility of being responsible for the result like this, we are only responsible for the process. If we use this mentality, the psychological pressure of procrastination can be greatly reduced, and many things will come to fruition. In fact, what we want to say is that procrastination itself is not a disease, nor is it a problem of time management, it is actually a problem of energy management. It is whether we can mobilize our energy and time, mobilize the rationality in our heads, and let it do things for us. Of course, it would be nice to be able to mobilize it at any time, but in our current society, it will become more and more difficult to mobilize that villain. Why is this? First, because there are so many temptations around us. The second is that if there is no special belief, we don't need much mobilization. You see, our entire industry is serving this primitive desire. For example, now there are ready-made meals made by others, haircuts that can be delivered to your door, and things you buy online will be delivered to your home. Right? Why bother? Therefore, the whole environment is to domesticate us more and more lazily. This is a big trend in society. Of course, there are still some people who continue to smash themselves, make things difficult for themselves, continue to think and innovate, and make our human knowledge territory bigger and bigger. They are the next evolutionary direction of our human beings. Having said that, let's review it now. In fact, there are 2 points. First, procrastination is very powerful. If you underestimate it, you may suffer. In the same way, if you procrastinate in doing things and can't change it, it is actually very normal and you don't need to blame yourself at all. Second, if you really can't manage your brain well and let it act according to your wishes, then it's best to accept it. After all, the pursuit of innovation and excellence is a way of life, and the pursuit of stability and comfort is also a way of life. This is the end of this episode of the show. What do you think about it differently? Welcome to leave a message to discuss with everyone. Hey, if you like our channel, please subscribe us. Haha, remember to like it.